The duct hissed when I kicked the ice off its housing, CO2 venting through a crack. Thin stream, low pressure. I watched it drift upward and vanish into the Martian dusk like it was ashamed to be here. Didn't need the pressure gauge to tell me it had failed by morning. That section was already offload, rerouted through Subgrid C 12 hours ago. But no one on Ridge's staff would double-check it until the alert went critical. By then, you'd lose coolant flow to 3 stabilizers and trigger a full thermal sweep across the canyon rim. So I logged it, by hand, pencil to paper, wrapped in polymer casing inside my logbook. Unit 08C, northeast segment, vent hairline fissure, recommend full sealant cycle. Redline Sector 6 had 100 problems, and I walked them daily. Martian dust chewed at the edges of my visor as I stood. Sunset hit the canyon like it always did, sideways and sharp. A red beam slicing across the rim until it scattered into grey static across my HUD. Up here, no trees, no birds, no wind that wasn't machine-driven. Just pressure-sealed corridors, solar arrays, and dust grit so fine it could clog your teeth. I tapped my boots twice on the access panel, superstition. 2 for the system gods, the techs used to say, back before they rotated Earthside. Now it was just me and a skeleton crew built on Grant cycles and hope. My name's Grant Crow, 47, recon specialist, long past the years when a clean shave mattered. 18 years in the US Space Force Recon Division, deep black, quiet jobs, cleanup ops where the mission briefs came redacted. After Ganymede, I quit. Thought I'd find peace out here. Mars offered silence. It never promised sanity. My earpiece clicked. A direct channel break-in. Crow, you on shift? Dr. Hal Liam, civilian, geotechnical lead for Redline, or as the crew called him, Rock Doc. Young for his credentials. Always looked like he was about to apologize for something, even when he was right. I'm walking duct line 6, I said, keeping my eyes on the failing unit. What do you need? We hit something. I turned. Define something. Drone 7 breached a sublayer, metal. You hit a pipe? No, he said, lower now. It's Grant, it's titanium. Smooth, like structural wall plating. I was moving before he finished. The dig site was a 30-minute rover crawl northeast across the canyon plateau, just past the stabilized dome zone. Hal waited outside the breach, pacing in that way of his, shoulders hunched, stylus tapping against his thigh like a ticking clock. His glasses caught the rover's headlamp, reflecting 2 perfect discs of panic. Don't touch anything, I said before the vehicle hissed open. I didn't. I stepped down, boots sinking half an inch into red dust, soft as flour. The excavation pit yawned beneath us, ringed with safety pylons that hadn't been there 12 hours ago. That meant Hal tried to report it. Ridge must have blocked the alert. Show me. He led me to the edge and pointed down. The drone sat idle, its left drill arm sheared clean where it had punched through. Embedded in the lower pit wall was a slab of brushed titanium, dull silver streaked with oxide. A maintenance panel, low placement, standard venting grid, but newer than anything that should have been buried 6 kilometers beneath Martian crust. I knelt beside it, running a hand across the surface. The alloy was warm. Where's the breach? I asked. Hal pointed. Left side, behind the drill casing, shaft behind it, full vertical column. And it's pressurized? Sealed tight. Internal readings came through the drone's sensors. Oxygen levels stable. Pressure at Earth sea level. I stood. Crow, Hal said. This can't be. I know what it can't be. I tapped my chest mic. Crow to Central. Security override. Route Naomi Ridge to dig site Bravo 7 immediately. Tier 1 find. Repeat, Tier 1. 5 minutes later, the sky cracked with VTOL wash as Ridge's shuttle descended. Precision landing, dust spiraling around her as she stepped out. Standard Mars Authority field uniform, black pressure weave, shoulder badge gleaming. Lieutenant Naomi Ridge didn't walk like a soldier. She walked like someone who knew every report went directly to Earth's Joint Agency Council and that mistakes were career-ending. She stopped 2 meters from me, arms folded. Why am I being summoned out of command rotation like it's a fire drill? I didn't answer. I just pointed. Her eyes dropped to the wall and stayed there. No record of pre-settlement installations in this zone, she said. We're at red line edge. Terraform cycle 3. There shouldn't be anything deeper than coolant ducts, crustal anchor points, old rover tracks. That's it, I finished. Until now. She stepped closer to the breach. Hal kept his distance. Do we have power? She asked. Something in there does. Contain it, she said. Nobody enters, nobody touches the panel. Until we receive uplink from Earth Command, this site is sealed under MTA lockdown. I stepped in front of her. It's already active. That panel. It's not just cosmetic, it's lit. It's got internal systems running. I said no entry. This isn't a leak, it's a doorway. She stared at me, long enough to count the lines at the corners of her eyes. Then she stepped back. I'll issue the hold and suppress the outbound logs. You keep it sealed. That's your jurisdiction. But if anyone breaks protocol, I'll have them on the next shuttle to Olympus. Ridge walked off to prep her uplink. Hal crouched next to me, eyes darting toward the breach. This place. It's not just old, it's wrong, it shouldn't be here. Neither should we. Then the panel beeped. A low, rising chime. A light flared to green. Hydraulics groaned behind the wall. Old, slow. The panel's seam split down the center and a recessed door began to slide inward, revealing a narrow, pressurized corridor lit by dull strips of amber light. No one had touched anything. Hal took an unconscious step back. Ridge narrowed her eyes. Did you do that? I shook my head. System's still live. Might have registered seismic pressure from the drone strike, or heat from proximity. Inside, vents exhaled a slow breath of stale, recycled air, Earth-normal mix. The kind you only smelled in legacy modules or backup shelters long past their decommission date. I approached, just enough to see the first 3 meters of corridor. Clean, undisturbed. I stepped across the threshold slow, one boot, then the other, and let the lock cycle finish behind me. Ridge and Hal followed, cautious, like stepping into a crime scene with no bodies. The lighting came alive in staggered strips, yellow and dull, stretching deeper into the corridor like a trail laid out just for us. Each one buzzed as it activated. Ridge kept one hand on her sidearm. Regulation model. Not much use in hard vac, but it made her feel in control. How deep does this go? She asked. According to Hal's drone, I replied. 6 vertical kilometers, straight down. Elevator? Looks like it. We walked. The corridor's geometry felt deliberately off, engineered with priorities that didn't match anything built after Terraform Cycle 1. Corners curved in a way that absorbed sound, not saved space. Vent spacing echoed Earth-standard layouts from the early 2000s, but tighter, more abrupt, built for function without regard for comfort. And the floor plating carried no maker's code. Nothing here said who built it, nothing said who owned it, just that it still worked. We reached a junction. Split right, short room. Hal stopped in the doorway, staring. Command access room, he murmured. Bank of screens along one wall, all black. The power indicator on the master console glowed steady green. That shouldn't be possible, he said. Even at reduced capacity, interface panels this old should have degraded. But this looks preserved. Ridge exhaled sharply through her nose. Preserved for what? 10 minutes later, Hal found the lift shaft. Recessed chamber, vertical alignment, reinforced alloy casement. Not a single mark of wear. Door opened smooth when I ran a manual override through my splice pad. Inside, the lift waited. Intact. Fusion traces, Hal said, scanning with his field meter. Power's being routed through a cold core. Has to be. I'm getting low-yield isotopic signatures. I stepped into the lift first. Empty. The kind of emptiness that didn't feel abandoned. Just unoccupied. Panel on the side offered 10 floors, all marked operational. No floor labels. I pressed 01. First level, living quarters. The door opened onto a hallway panelled in modular alloys, off-white with seams that looked welded by hand, but guided by something smarter. Doors lined both sides, flush with the walls, stamped with 6-digit alphanumerics. Pods, Hal muttered. Residential. I opened one. Inside a single bed, folded sheets, wall interface offline, standard issue rebreather unit mounted beside a dormant vitals node. Ridge stepped up beside me. It's like they were waiting for someone to check in. The hydroponic bay was next. Hal led the way. Rows of nutrient trays, vines long dead, but irrigation channels intact, feeding tubes clean, fluid filters humming. How is this system still running? Hal asked. Looped automation, I said. No need for human intervention. Designed to maintain baseline until a crew returns. Ridge flinched at that. Returns? There was no first crew. Hal looked at her. Then who preceded the beds? We kept going deeper. Kian Bishop arrived an hour later. Quiet type. Systems linguist brought in from telemetry salvage. Most people didn't know what a deep code forensic was or why you needed one. I knew. He'd been on my flagged list since Europa. Recompiled a corrupted AI core that everyone else wrote off as junk. Said it wasn't magic, just math. But I read the logs. It wasn't just math. He arrived with a portable neural interface rig slung over one shoulder, a modified HUD resting over one eye. Didn't say much, just plugged into the local node Hal marked and started reading. I leaned against the wall nearby, watching him scroll through the hex layer feed. You finding anything? His fingers hovered mid-keystroke. None of this follows Martian data formatting. Structure looks human. By the third level, we were all on edge. The environmental systems were syncing with ours. That was the first flag. Ridge's compad picked up internal signals she didn't authorize. Oxygen ratios began matching Redline's living quarters instead of Earth standard. Hal noticed the clocks were running on coordinated Martian time, our current cycle. I'm initiating lockdown, Ridge said. We need full jurisdictional freeze until Earth Command gives formal disposition. No uplinks, no open comms. Physical data transfers only. Hal stared at her like she'd struck him. We can't bury this. We don't even know what it is. You don't bury it, she said. You stop it from spreading. Kian didn't comment. He just kept digging. He found the first partial log on level 4. Fragmented, half-corrupted. Restored just enough metadata to pull 3 names. None of them existed in the Redline system. Not in any personnel file. But their badge IDs matched our format. And the log date read, March 7th, 2142. 10 years ago, before Redline was built. Ridge took one look and ordered a recall to surface. I didn't move. They were already here, I said. Long before we arrived. Before we even planned Terraform Cycle 3. So what exactly do you think Earth Command is going to say when they find out they didn't come first? She didn't answer. She just stared down the corridor, into the facility, into the silence. I looked back at the console. A prompt blinked on the screen. The structure was recognizably linguistic, an old format Kian flagged from a defunct military salvage protocol. It flashed once, then changed. Awaiting confirmation, occupancy threshold incomplete. I didn't know what that meant, but it didn't feel like a welcome. We were on level 4 now. Deeper than anyone in Redline's sector was supposed to go. Not that protocols meant much in a place with no origin point. Ridge was quiet. The kind of quiet that wrapped around her posture. No more clipped orders, no movement except her eyes. She wasn't holding her sidearm anymore. Her fingers just hovered near the latch like she'd forgotten what it was for. You all right? I asked. Not because I didn't know the answer. She blinked once. I don't like ghosts. This place doesn't have ghosts, I said. Ghosts imply something died. Hal had gone ahead again, head ducked under a beam conduit, muttering into a recorder slung at his chest. He'd started doing that on level 3. I hadn't asked what the memos were for. Probably didn't matter. I'd seen people talk to their own recorders during the Ganymede debrief. Most of them needed something human to bounce the thoughts off of when the silence pressed in too tight. It was easy to get turned around in a place like this. Every hallway felt like it should lead somewhere familiar. But nothing here ended where it started, and the lighting was too consistent. That's what got under your skin. No burned-out panels, no degraded filament. Every section lit evenly, precisely like the system had waited in stasis and resumed operation without missing a beat. I checked my HUD. Still synced with surface time, 2:43 local. That meant the systems down here were correcting for latency and matching Redline's broadcast signal. That wasn't passive sync, that was active mirroring. The kind used in secure link nodes and classified orbital comms, which meant someone or something was running a simulation of the surface systems from within. I filed that thought away. I'd seen operational mimicry before, never liked where it led. "Crow," Hal called from ahead. "You need to see this." I moved toward his voice, hand resting near the latch on my thermal sidearm. Not because I expected trouble, because trouble didn't always announce itself. He'd found another access terminal, buried half inside a wall cavity near a side stairwell. Different design from the last one. Less civilian-facing, hardened panel, heavy casing, the kind you'd find in a pre-war field bunker or naval fallback station. Kian was already jacked in, HUD flickering, breath shallow. "I'm pulling secondary command logs," he murmured. "This one's deep. Latent archive buried behind 6 layers of compression." "How old?" I asked. He didn't answer, just started parsing the data aloud as it unpacked. "Personnel manifest, structural registry, code series, doesn't match any known Miltech trees. Not Mars-fabbed, not Earth-fed." He stopped, then looked up. "But the syntax has Earth root origins, just older, much older." Ridge crossed her arms. "How much older?" He pointed to a header field. "Mission series EP-01A, initiation year 1971. Ridge's voice cracked before she caught it. "That's impossible." "No," Kian said, quiet. "It's just classified enough no one remembers what was scrubbed." Hal squatted beside the panel, running his hand across the exposed frame. "These casings," he said, "they're not Martian alloys. This is terrestrial titanium, Earth mined, the weld patterns, the temper ratios. This was built planetside, then brought here." "Nothing in 1971 had interplanetary lift capability," Ridge snapped. "Nothing publicly," I corrected. She turned to me. "You think this was a black launch? I think whoever built this never expected us to find it." We went down another level, level 5. The elevator accepted Kian's key loop. No prompt this time. Just a pressure change as the doors sealed and the descent began. We exited into a command center. That was the only way to describe it. Central layout. Consoles arranged in a hexagonal web. Overhead illumination built into the floor grating above, angled to prevent reflection on glass surfaces. A military design, optimized for fast data read, low silhouette, and rapid operator switch-outs. All the screens were dead. Except one. A single curved monitor at the core node lit with a stable green glow. A prompt blinked once. "Sector control override inactive, requires handshake." Hal moved first, slowly, like a diver swimming into deeper water than expected. "What does it mean, handshake?" "Key validation," Kian answered. "Manual, requires credentials, probably badge input or biometric scan, but it's running." "Yeah." Kian's voice was quieter now. "It's running." I stepped up beside him and looked at the panel. There was no login prompt, no credentials screen, just a blinking cursor, steady and patient. It wasn't asking for anything, which meant it either didn't expect a user or didn't care who was standing there. Hal drifted to a secondary console, brushing dust off the side panel with the edge of his glove. The screen underneath came to life, amber backlight bleeding through a grid of old-style menu nodes. "Hold up," he muttered. "There's log data. Not much, but recent." I leaned over and squinted at the timestamp headers. Julian format, Local Martian offset, +0. No planetary sync drift. These entries are all from the last 3 years, I said. Red Line didn't start construction until 2150. Kian pulled a step closer. Someone's been inside this system recently. Hal scrolled one more page down. His breath hitched. This entry was made June 28th, 2149. Ridge looked up sharply. That's a full year before Terraform Cycle 3 even began. No user ID, Hal said, shaking his head. Just a generic ops signature, HNG 1979. That's not name, that's a code block. Auto-generated? I asked. Maybe, Kian said. Or inherited from a failed security stub. Could be anything. This system isn't following modern tag conventions. But it's still logging, Hal said. It's been logging something. I looked at the entry. The log contents were fragmented. Partial entries, command echoes, system states toggled in sequence. No readable text. Just metadata confirming cycles had occurred. Autonomous actions. Something inside the facility had kept working, kept recording, even though no one was meant to be here. I pulled Hal gently away from the console. You've seen enough, I said. He didn't resist immediately. His eyes stayed on the screen like it might change if he stared hard enough. I don't get it, he said. Why would it be logging events using code formats we recognize? Some of these fields look like legacy Earth schema. They're old, but familiar. Because these systems weren't abandoned, I said. They were hidden, shelved, not scrapped. Someone brought them here. Someone meant for them to stay dark. Ridge stepped in behind us and slotted a data cube into the console's output port. It clicked once, light blinking as it began to sync. No uplink, she said. Back up to local node only. This doesn't leave the ground. They'll still bury it, Kian muttered. Ridge didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was flat. Then we'll be the ones holding the shovel. Back in the lift, Hal was silent. Kian stared at the far wall like he was tracing math in the dark. Ridge stood nearest the panel, hands behind her back, shoulders locked, eyes forward. I reached past her and keyed in level 6. She turned, not enough to stop me, just enough to remind me command wasn't something she gave up easily. But the chain of command didn't run this deep anymore. Not when the architecture below us predated every jurisdiction we'd ever sworn to follow. The elevator dropped with that same unnatural glide, 6 levels down into a memory someone tried to erase. The doors parted with a breath of warm air and a sound I'd come to recognize. Process. Measured and mechanical. Kian blinked, like waking from a trance. That's active, he said. That's a machine cycle. The corridor here was narrower, utility infrastructure. Pipes along the walls, bundled cable sleeves sealed in polymer-ribbed housing. Industrial. We stepped out together. Every few meters, old-style caution tape striping lined the floor near junctions. Faded but not cracked. Air was warmer here, drier. Whatever insulation system this place used, it was overcorrecting for heat retention. Processing facility, I said aloud, though mostly to myself. Or fabrication. Ridge moved beside me, checking her HUD. No atmospheric variance, still at equilibrium, radiation levels holding baseline. Kian was already scanning the walls with his handheld node. I've got power draw on the grid, he murmured. Rotating cycle, some kind of thermal buffering pattern. Something's using heat down here. We turned the corner and found the source. A long chamber sloped downward into a fabrication floor 3 meters below us. A wide, automated mill-lathe hybrid system occupied the center platform, its articulated arms moving with precision. One of the print arms rotated on a gimbal, extruding a stream of black glass filament into a pre-formed mold. Another cut grooves into the frame. The completed piece, a jagged, asymmetrical bracket the size of a fist, was swept onto a tray and replaced by the next mold, which hadn't existed 5 seconds earlier. There were no interface screens, no control terminals, just motion. Are we sure this place is abandoned? Ridge asked. Abandonment implies something stopped, I replied. Hal stepped down into the chamber first, cautiously, not touching the rails. His eyes were fixed on the tray of parts. These aren't finished components, he said. Not in any standardized way. They're not modular, not symmetrical. They aren't compatible with anything I've seen. Structural supports? Ridge asked. Hal shook his head. Supports don't get precision grooved for what? What even goes in here? He pointed to the molded slot in one of the pieces. It doesn't match any known bolt width. It's not even standard radius. Kian moved closer to the tray and took a scan. His HUD flickered for a few seconds, then went blank. No match, he said flatly. No cross-reference hits. Materials a carbon silicate blend, synthetic, engineered at a molecular level. Martian alloy? Ridge asked. No, this was made in 0G, lab-forged, pressure-milled. It's not reacting to any of our thermal tags either. He paused. There's no blueprint, he added. What do you mean, no blueprint? Ridge moved toward the console instinctively, then stopped when she remembered there wasn't one. I mean, it's printing components without instruction. The system is producing parts that weren't called. No directive chain, no log design file. Then what is it following? I asked. Kian crouched, staring into the inner assembly chamber where a new piece had just dropped into final cooling. I think it's remembering. That landed harder than it should have. I walked a slow circle around the machine, keeping my distance. The cooling vents weren't modern. No smart regulation, no adaptive fail-safes. Just fans, old style, humming low behind metal mesh. But the heat signature was precise, like it was being trimmed per cycle. Whatever was running this place didn't care that it was outdated. It just wanted continuity. Maybe it's running recovery protocols, Hal offered. Something failed decades ago. It's piecing itself back together. Ridge didn't move. What's it rebuilding? That silence settled on all of us. I looked down at one of the pieces on the tray. Long spine, offset teeth, no clear function. Then I saw repeating cuts on the inner cavity. Not random, recessed glyphs, not language, but spacing. Spaced like data markers. Like it wasn't just a bracket, it was carrying something. Kian knelt beside me. Embedded memory lattice, he said quietly, encoded through mold depth. These are functional components, storage capable. He stood slowly. That thing's not building a chassis. What then? Ridge asked. It's building a system, and it doesn't want input. Hal stared at the parts, at the slow, relentless assembly. What happens when it's done? We didn't answer, because the system wasn't talking, and we weren't the ones it was building for. I moved to the rear wall, found a service alcove, rusted pressure latch, faded hazard stripe across the seam. I popped it open. Behind it, rows of old cable trunks, sealed and tagged. Not a single one routed to the surface. These weren't power lines. They were insulated comm lines, local distribution only. This place was never meant to transmit up, I said aloud, just between levels, all internal. Ridge looked at me. Like a bunker. Like a server farm, Kian replied. I traced one line, followed it along the wall to an access grate tucked behind the fabrication platform. Lifted the grate, a crawl space. Cool air pushed upward, laced with something industrial, acrid. Electrical degradation, faint ion scent, systems in slow burn. I looked at Ridge. We follow this, see where it leads. She hesitated, then nodded once. I went in first, pulling my shoulder harness tighter. My sidearm stayed ready at the hip, hand on grip, but not drawn. As I crawled, I could hear the vibrations behind me. Kian muttering lines of data into his recorder. Hal breathing shallow through the dust mask. Ridge whispering a sync update to her wrist node, voice tight and clipped like a confession. Ahead, the tunnel sloped downward again. And somewhere past that bend, something was waiting to receive what Echo Point was building. The duct opened into a deep access corridor. The air shifted, drier, stiller, no cross-current. That meant we were sealed. Whatever systems breathed down here weren't connected to Redline's grid anymore. They were cycling their own atmosphere. We dropped onto ceramic tile. The walls curved inward and flared into an atrium. What hit first wasn't the architecture. It was the density, like stepping into a memory that hadn't moved since the day it was stored. Servers surrounded us, not modern towers but reinforced cores sealed in glass, mounted into support scaffolds like ribs around a central spine. Machines built heavy, meant to outlive the engineers that maintained them. Status indicators blinked in slow, mismatched rhythm, like a heartbeat through broken optics. Ridge stepped to my side, eyes scanning the layout. "Processing core?" she asked. "No," I said. "Something older." Kian answered without looking up from his HUD. "This is a command brain, distributed logic mesh, quantum integrated. We're standing in a colony-level cognition center. It wasn't just designed to think, it was designed to decide." He crossed the floor, pausing at the central dais, elevated 5 steps up, console ringed in dormant holoplates. In the center sat a fixed terminal and a simple chair bolted to the floor, the only thing clean in the room. Kian wiped the dust from the terminal screen. The interface blinked once. Beneath the screen, a slot glowed green. "Not biometric," he muttered. "Requires keyed input, probably physical authentication." I moved beside him and opened the slot. Inside was a crystal memory shard. Heavy, black-cased, with one end exposed to reveal a matrix of etched conductive lines. Kian took a step back. "That's not just storage. That's an inheritance node." Hal joined us, eyes narrowed. "A what?" "A system-state capsule," Kian said. "Full operational memory, identity. Whoever built this place left it for whoever came next." I turned the shard over in my hand. No markings, but there was a word etched into the slot casing. "Inheritance key engagement, post-colonial use only." Hal stepped back as if it had hissed. "Post-colonial," he said. "Then they expected someone to find this." "They expected someone to need it," I said. Ridge finally spoke. "But if this was built by Earth, by a nation or agency, then someone already knows it's here." She looked directly at me. "So why didn't anyone say anything?" I paused. Kian answered before I could. "Maybe someone at the very top of Earth Command does know," he said quietly. "And their silence is intentional." Ridge frowned. "Why bury something like this? Why not use it?" "Because it was never meant to be used," Kian said. "Only activated if Earth failed. If things went off the rails so badly that starting over on Mars was the last card left." He gestured to the servers. "Then the threat passed, so they erased it, scrubbed the logs, redirected surface construction, buried it under treaties and new maps. That's what bureaucracies do with things they're afraid of. They don't dismantle them. They forget them." Hal folded his arms. "And now we're standing on top of a forgotten backup plan." "No," I said. "We're standing on a choice." I set the shard down on the console and stepped back. "We don't activate it." Ridge looked at me like I'd snapped. "Crow, that system could run every dome on Mars. It's autonomous, power-stable, offline for 2 centuries and still operational. That's not a relic. It's a foundation." "And if we bring it online," I said, "Earth will tear itself in half trying to claim it. Governments, corporations, black-budget archives crawling with names we've never heard. This thing was built when the only kind of future was a military one. You really want to let it define what comes next." Ridge hesitated. Hal said nothing, but his posture shifted. He wasn't backing away from the idea. He was backing toward it. Kian finally gave a slow nod. "Then we seal it. Strip the beacon, fake a collapse, feed a cover report to Mars Authority and bury the real logs. I'll write a dummy script," he added. "Push static to Earthside archives. Show sensor ghosting, structural instability, then fade it to loss of contact. I can issue the jurisdictional lockdown," Ridge added. "Paper trail a command conflict. Secure the site under dormant review protocols. And the real logs? Hal asked. I looked at the crystal shard, then slid it back into the slot and closed it. I'll document what matters, I said. Handwritten, analog. Keep it off system. We left the way we came, through the crawl space, up past the fabrication floor, still assembling parts with no instructions, as if the machine hadn't noticed we'd seen too much. Or maybe it had, and didn't care. Outside, the Martian dusk bled orange across the horizon. Ridge didn't speak. Hal carried silence like a burden now. Kian pulled the hood of his suit up, eyes unfocused, already layering counter-narratives in his head. At the edge of the ridge, I looked back once. There was no monument, just the dust settling around a hatch no one would ever mark on a map again. We didn't win anything. We didn't solve everything. But we kept it out of the wrong hands. And for now, on this red, angry world, we'd held the line.